I'm Kevin. I know most of you. I'm the broker of the office, which means I get to be your contact whenever you have an issue that comes up. You go, hey, I know some of you are on teams. You can always start with your team leader or whatever. But then you call me and say, hey, Kevin, what do I do about this? Whether I think this person is doing something that isn't right. I just want to make sure I'm doing what's right. Something might go right. My client has a question about this that I don't know how to answer. You can always call me. And I don't think I'm scary when you call. I try to be on your side. And if, by the way, if I get calls about our agents, I will always say, oh, that doesn't sound like something they would do. Let me find out and find some more information. So my job is to protect us, the brokerage, protect you guys, the agents. And so, no, I'm on your side. I'm here as a resource and to help you in that. Sound good? All right. So I wrote some questions on the board. What questions am I missing that we should answer today? By the way, hi Zoom. It's always best if we can see your faces, so I encourage you to turn on your screen if you can. Otherwise, enjoy. And Candy, are you going to sit there?
Yeah.
Candy's going to monitor the questions, so you can write your questions there as well. All right. Good. All right. On the board, any questions that you would like me to answer that we're missing? Nothing? If everyone just goes, oh, we're good, I kind of will read that way as well.
Kevin,
Yeah.
I can't see the board. I do have one question, so I don't know if you can add it to it or if it's already there.
Okay, let's hear it.
It pertains to the purchase agreement in lines 104 to 112. Just going over the retained by seller or refunded to buyer and the difference in meaning in those two paragraphs.
Gotcha. As far as the written statement, as far as the earnest money.
Right.
Yeah. Perfect. I think it's funny when people say lines and I have no contract in front of me and I'm like, okay. And then when they get some more information. So Maureen, I love it. Lines that I'm starting to get to know are like when someone says line 146. I'll be, okay, I kind of know where you're talking about it. All right. Candy, can you turn these on?
I
thought they weren't on and maybe they just went off because.
Is your screen black?
No, my screen's not black. All right, everyone know how to get to all these forms that we're going to go to? Say no, yes, kind of. And what I know is that we're all in different spots along the journey. So I'll go pretty fast, but I'll try to show you each of the steps that I'm going into.
People's gotten turned off.
Oh,
That's weird. Technology.
technology. What's behind that? That's not my screen.
It'll take a minute.
Oh,
Probably.
gotcha. Let me just see if I can mirror. It says mirroring.
Okay, is that your screen?
Yeah, that's my screen.
Perfect.
All right. So the way I do this, and maybe you have some quicker ways, but everything's in North Star MLS, right? Everyone in this room had paid your North Star access. Everyone, you got an email or you got something from Candy or from NAR or whatever. Then your NERDS number. Hey, one of the things is your NERDS number is different than your license number. Whenever you go get CE, they'll oftentimes ask you for your license number. Your NERDS number is the number that you use most often to log into things, right? So if you go to Minneapolis Realtors, I think you use your NERDS number, but you got to look up your license number to see where you're at for your CEs and all that kind of stuff. All right. This looks familiar?
Mm-hmm.
All right, someone tell me, where do I go for forums?
External link. Oh, I go to external link.
You go to external links?
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I go
The
there
easiest
too.
way to get there, right? Yeah.
It seems like it's the easiest way. However, this little tool right here, if you just go to this, it brings you right there. So, same thing. Some people, when you sign stuff, do you go to Authenticign outside of it, or do you go right in there? You can get there both ways, but it's right in here is Authenticign if you sign on that spot right there. Transaction desk, yep, and it brings you to this spot. What I love about going right to transaction desk is I can just hit a spot here, I can add, and then there are, for you, you can enter different templates for things of how you would rather always set it up. Otherwise, if you go in, you'll see a couple, and sometimes I get questions on this, so I'm gonna answer this right away. The KWLMPHT, that's the hauling team. And sometimes what they have filled in there already is their, they have like this standard fill in, and then they have a broker admin fee that might be a little different than yours. So how, it doesn't mean if you go there and you go, wait a minute, this isn't how it looks. That might be because you're using another team's instead of using your own or creating. I like going in and creating. Oftentimes I'll use profiles and just go, okay, now I can change and edit. You do not have to, just because you use profiles, you don't have to be a customer of profile. They'd love for you to be a customer of theirs. And they're not seeing something just because you created it using that template. All right. So if there's another template in there, Greg Sletton has one still in there, which is interesting. I have one that I created before I used profiles, and so those are in there. All right, I'm going to see where we're at. What is required before we show a home?
Buyer representation.
Okay, some sort of buyer representation. Or touring.
Like touring or the buyer representation.
That's right. So here are the couple different things that you have to have some agreement as you're going in, right? Not everyone who goes in is going to be a client of yours. They might just be a touring customer of yours. And so Zillow, when we went through all this thing, Zillow came out with a touring agreement. If you go into your forms, and if we put touring, there's a buyer touring agreement that we can look at. I'm a huge fan of sign people as soon as you can, right? Like go show them value, put an agreement in there. So my preference, and one of the things I would coach you towards, is get a exclusive buyer rep that says, hey, this is a relationship that you come to see me, just like when you go see a doctor, you go in and there's going to be an agreement of this costs a certain amount of money, right? And that's what your agreement, your agreement has to disclose, is what's the cost? What is that going to look like? So here's a touring agreement that doesn't make them a client, but it allows for these services, right? And it does, see, you can see right on there, it talks about the compensation that has to be part of the agreement. So you could say, look, I get paid to show you each home, I get paid $50. I get paid $150. I get paid $500, whatever. That doesn't mean I'm representing you. That means you're a customer that I'm showing a property to, right? You could do the no compensation. You could do all these different pieces on there. Before you show a property, you just have to have some kind of agreement. Someone tell me why you would not use a one-time showing agreement with a buyer. Do you know what I mean when I say one-time showing agreement?
Agreement?
No. So this is one of the confusing pieces that sometimes I get questioned about. There's a one-time showing agreement, and what that is actually doing is that's establishing a compensation between you and the seller. How am I going to get paid if I show your property? So this is different than the one-time showing agreement. This is a touring agreement with the buyer, right? One-time showing agreements were very popular in a time when the compensation oftentimes came from the selling side. And so especially if it was like a first-time home buyer or the home's not yet on the market, I want to know how I'm gonna get compensated by you as we go and tour this house. That is not this touring agreement. This touring agreement is something separate. If you were, so I'm gonna go right down to this question. What happens if the person that calls you doesn't want to sign? Now what? What do you think you do? You say, they call you up and say, hey, Alex, it's Kevin. I really want to go see this property. You say, well, before I can show you the property, you got to have a buyer rep. Like we have to have a contract or a touring agreement or something. I say, look, I'm not signing anything. What's your response?
Bummer.
Yeah.
You can't.
Can't show you
Can't show you the house.
Right, and you can even say, well, I'm sorry, I can't show you the property unless we have a sign. And I understand you might not be ready to use me for whatever, so we can do this other option of a touring agreement, but I cannot show you a property without having a signed agreement from you.
What verbiage do you use when, if they don't want you to be your buyer rep, you to be their buyer rep, what verbiage do you use with a touring agreement?
Yeah, so that's a deeper question of what I would ask, what's keeping them from going to that next spot? And it might be, hey, I'm just really looking at this spot. I don't know you. Oftentimes that might come from a lead where I just don't know you. Maybe we sign this agreement, and then we move forward. I say, that's great. I tell you what, we can even take that exclusive buyer rep and just put on there for the properties that I've shown you. This is how I'm gonna get compensated. And then I would ask questions. Is there something about this relationship that you're uncomfortable with moving forward? You know, look, I'm sure you can understand that my services are not free, and I gotta make sure that I'm spending time with people that wanna be my clients. Is this I never wanna be, and just getting more information about that. Kind of pieces where I go. Kind of schmooze and, yeah, right? Because some reason you gotta get to the actual, what's the objection? Is the objection of, I don't know how this works, so I've been told all my life, never sign anything? Is it really have a buddy who's just not available right now, and I think I should use your time? Well, those are two different kind of conversations, right? Because my services aren't free, and if you're gonna work with your buddy, I have no interest in showing you this property.
You sign a buyer up for like a 24-hour period?
Yep, you can put a time on there and all. In order for me to contract, you have to have dates. It can't be TBD, and you have to have the cost. So those things cannot be TBD, but you can make the cost as little as much as you want, and you can put the date as long or short as you want. So I always tell my clients, this is a buyer contract that puts me in relationship to work with you and you to work with me. I always sign them for 1 year is where I start. And then if they have some objection, and I always sign for 1 year. I know we'll find a house way before then, but that just puts us in a different spot. So I just normalize the conversation of what I do. Remember, the party on the other side who you're going to represent has little knowledge about what this whole process is like, right? In fact, most people, their knowledge in their lifetime might be 5 different transactions of buying and selling a home. So it's important that you explain that process to them and help them understand your norm, right? Yeah.
If they sign the buyer broker agreement.
Yep.
And then they decide before it expires.
Yeah.
That they want out.
Yeah.
What is their process?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. When someone wants out, it's just like entering any other agreement. So the buyer representation, and I think most of the contracts say it can be canceled by mutual agreement. So if someone's working with you and they say, hey, this isn't working, I want out of the contract, then your question will be, well, help me understand. Like what's not working? I had a client that I took on as the broker from another agent. And then with me, they said, yeah, I want out of this. And I said, well, how about this? How about we meet face to face? And they said, no, I just want out of the contract. I said, well, not how it works, right? You can't just get out of a contract because you want to get out of a contract. I said, I'd be happy to explore happy to sit down with you and talk about why. And, they finally responded, well, it looks like you're not gonna let us out of this, so, how about we just start working together? I'm like, great. And we had a closing, they were happy and whatever. So some people, I think in a transaction, conflict's gonna show up sometimes, and you just gotta figure out how to work through it. I also, when I do my buyer rep, I tell people, look, we're gonna extend this, but I want to work, just like you want to work with people that want to work with me, I want to work with people that want to work with me. And so if anytime during this arrangement, if it's not working, let's have a conversation. If we can't get to work, I'll let you out of the contract. However, there is an obligation of that contract. If they were to buy a house during that contract period, they owe you the compensation. So there's not you can't just back out of a contract. That's why we have contracts. And you are due as long as you're in that contract of the compensation. So, yeah, makes sense. Has anyone ever had to cancel a contract? No one's ever canceled a contract? Oh, yes, yes,
And it was for somebody that I was like, I cannot work with you. Like,
right,
she was trying to go around me to go to the listing agent
Right.
and.
right. And there are times, and this person, there are times where you're like, I don't want to work with this person anymore. I want to fire them. And in the same way, you want to send them a contract that says, hey, I'm not working with you anymore. They have to sign that cancellation as well in order for you to get all your duties gone. So, yeah, they're contracts. They're real. People need to understand as they enter them. And in time, you will have cancellations on your contracts. Sometimes you'll be really happy about it, and other times you'll be like, right. Because what happens is we get the closing check in our mind, and we're like, oh, we were so close, and now it went awry. But it's good to cancel when you need to, when there's not a way to go. But I find most times, you take a moment to sit down with a person and understand what the challenges are. And if you can fix those challenges or address those challenges or just talk through them, oftentimes you can get to a successful closing, right? Most people get combative because they don't know something, or there's a fear in that, or there's something in that leads to the anger, and you just gotta change. Sometimes you make change. So what else is required before you can show a home? What else is required?
Agency disclosure.
Agency disclosure. We've talked so much about, hey Rick, we've talked so much about the agreements that we sometimes forget to talk agency disclosure. Agency disclosure is due right away. What happens if they don't sign agency disclosure?
You have to prove that you showed it to them.
Right, you have to prove that you showed it to them. So right on the agency, presented to that the client or person was unwilling to sign, right? So you want to document that you presented it to them. You have the obligation to present it to them. So you want to do that. We also have KW disclosures that you should present to them as well. And oftentimes that's before they become your client. So you don't have to do it before you show, but if you're doing disclosures, it's good to do right in that spot. Good? Any questions about, can I show a house? How do I go show a house? What's needed on the contract side of going to show a house? Everyone knows? If someone says, hey, can you put me on an MLS search? What should you have first? You should have agency. What else should you have? I say this. I say, look, the MLS, which you guys all paid for, you just paid for it, by the way, $150 for the quarter. You do that 4 times a year. MLS is something that I provide to my clients. if you'd like to get on the clients, then I'd love to set up a great time where we can go through this, what it means to work together, right? So you shouldn't put people on your MLS search that are not your clients. That's just not what it's for. There's a value there that, that they can't even, Zillow is really good, Homes is really good, but there's a value still in the MLS that they can't, get without being your client.
Kevin, can I ask a question about that?
Yep.
So I met with a couple earlier this week who they're thinking about selling their house. They weren't ready to sell. I mean, they weren't ready to sign a listing agreement yet. And they were telling me what they're looking for. And they weren't ready to sign a buyer's rep yet because they don't even know if they want to sell. I left them with the contract for them to look over and
Yep.
went over the buyer's rep agreement with them. And I did start them on a search. And in only a couple of days, they reached out to me saying, hey, oh my gosh, I want to go see this house. And I said, well, you know what? Here's the deal. In order for me to go schedule that, either I swing by and pick up those papers that I left with you signed, or I can send it via DocuSign and we can get moving. And they signed it via DocuSign. I went and showed the house and I got a 1-year representation. So I've found that sometimes that setting them up on a search first can kind of get them closer to being ready. Is that okay to do?
However, the challenge is, if someone said to you, you went to work for that person, did you offer them a value that they could not without getting with a realtor? And you did, and that's where that agreement has to have that's where that compensation agreement is due, is before you do any work for them. And that's why it's not just about a touring, it's about doing work for the other party. And that's why I say you should put someone on the MLS before. Now, if you have them like you just send everyone kind of like your KW kind of thing, that's just going everywhere. I'm not doing any work. I haven't made this specifically for you. It's a marketing tool. That's different than sending you on an MLS search. An MLS search is not a marketing tool. So I'm glad it worked out for you. I understand, but that the intention of that contract is to make, or the rule is to make it so that doesn't happen.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm glad it worked out for you. That's good. And that's the thing too, right? Is some people are right on the edge. So it might be, hey, I left you the paperwork. I'd love to get started and bring you this next piece of value, which is simply an MLS search so you can start to see what's out there currently. When can I pick up that paperwork? Right? So there's understanding, I want to do this for you. I'm going to take it back. I'm going to take it away so I can show you value when we're in relationship together. Good? All right. We're good with this spot? The touring? Check. Oh, we did this. What if blank doesn't want to sign? Now what? Check. You understand you cannot show a house if you don't have something signed, right? Everyone understands that? I can't do this if I don't have it. All right. We're back in this spot. Okay. Now I'm ready to present an offer. What do I need to show when I present my offer? What do I need to have?
Pre-approval.
Purchase agreement is great. I heard yours too. A pre-approval is great. Purchase agreement is a completely necessary, right? Like that is the offer, that the way you're expressing the offer is through the purchase agreement. What else do you need to have? Okay, seller's disclosure sign, right? Before the seller's disclosure is supposed to come even before you let people tour your property, by the way. If you're listing, that seller disclosure is supposed to show up before you bring people into your property to do opens or showings. So oftentimes people forget that that's required on there, but it is. Your property disclosure, whether it be a seller's property disclosure or it be a third-party inspection, or be a waiver, those are due before you have people come into your house. What else? So you want to show that. What else is required with sending an offer? Arbitration disclosure. Arbitration disclosure. Great. This is a good one we're going to pause on. Arbitration disclosure. Why is this required in our offers? Anyone know? It's a weird thing, right? To include.
Of litigation.
Yeah, it's a lot of litigation. It's a weird thing to include in there, and it's a weird thing because, one, we're not attorneys, and we're not supposed to give any legal advice. So I got an agent, reached out to me last week and said, Kevin, there's ambiguity around how I'm supposed to present this. Like, is it good for my buyers or sellers to sign? Is it not good for my buyers or sellers to sign? And I said there's ambiguity there because we are not supposed to coach in any way towards that, right? So what I always do, not coaching, but what I tell my clients is what it says in bold. Anyone know what it says in bold on that arbitration?
You're right to go to court for
50,000, something, they can't go after more than 50,000.
So here's why.
I think it's 15. Now I'm second guessing myself. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why you would ever accept arbitration.
You could say, you can't say that to your client. But you
No,
can say
I'm
it
just,
to
in my head, I'm like, cause if you can't go over anything over 15,000, that kind of sucks.
So, come on, pull it. As a brokerage, do we require that you agree to arbitration? No. Do we tell you you're not allowed to agree to arbitration? No. What do we tell you? It's not that or that. What is it? It's up to you. You guys get to make the decision if it makes sense for you to agree to arbitration or not. Some brokerages say not to do arbitration, right? The challenge with it is this line right here for me.
Did it change? I swear to
Yeah, it
God. Okay, I'm like, I know it was 15.
Can you guys see that spot that I highlighted?
This version says 50.
Thank you. So wait, there's a new version.
Yeah, this is different. This is my challenge, is you're giving up a right. And
Yeah.
for me, I say, why would I give up a right before I even know if it's gonna be necessary?
Right.
Just because you don't agree to don't agree to give up your right then, doesn't mean you can't choose to go to arbitration in the future, right? So that's what I tell my clients as well is, I can't coach you on this, but by signing it, I just want you to see you are given your right to go to litigation. Now, if I'm a seller, for me, I go, oh, I don't know that I want to do that, right? Like arbitration, I don't know that if I want to agree to. If I'm a buyer, I might want to go, hey, we're going to arbitration. And now the seller already agreed to arbitration. The reason I go to arbitration is because it's cheaper, oftentimes. It's easier to get to. I don't have lawyer fee right away, right? So maybe I'd want it, maybe I don't. Also, one of the things that's interesting on here is this part right here. Your purchase agreement will still be valid whether or not you sign the arbitration agreement. The challenge with this is sometimes you'll get the request, hey, you didn't sign arbitration. My clients would like you to sign arbitration, which shouldn't be part of the purchase agreement negotiation, but I have seen that has come up before. So that's that. But do you have to have this part of your offer? Doesn't have to be part of your offer, but it has to be presented to both parties, right? So you don't have to include it. Most people do include it in your offer. Do you have to sign it? Does your client have to sign it? No. Just to be great, one of the things on templates sometimes is it auto populates like your information here. And if it does that, even though your signature is not on there, everyone else signed, they might say to you, this is what lawyers tell us. Yeah, they agreed to it. Here's their information. So if you're going to decline it, you can write decline on it. Or leave names off it. Don't have printed and not signed. Don't have printed and not signed, just take the names off.
I've also heard that you should like strike through it, but is that like not necessary?
It's not necessary. It's just the same thing. It's a strike through or decline or whatever. Don't have your names on there with nothing. Because then that's what the lawyers say. Well, maybe they did, maybe they won't. Yeah.
Have you agreed to arbitration in a deal before?
I used to agree to arbitration all the time. Now I tend to go, I'm not agreeing to arbitration. And the reason is because now I talk to lawyers more often. And before it was just a fault, I did it. So,
My understanding that if one person declines it,
Yeah.
then it's declined for everyone.
yeah, the agreement's done. Yeah.
And I had a client before I was working with her who ended up going to arbitration, and it was very difficult. And the attorney she ended up using said that he just didn't have, I mean, it was up to one person.
Yeah.
It was a mess. She ended up spending so much money on
Yeah.
it, so.
Yeah, it can be worse for sure. And the thing is, just because I declined to give up my right, if everyone else wants to go to arbitration, I can make the decision then, okay, I'm gonna go. Let's do it. So it breaks the agreement that we're all gonna just do it right away. Now, can I coach on it? I can't coach on it. If they say, well, what should I do? What do we tell them? You may want to contact your attorney.
What would
Right.
you do? Can they ask that? And do you answer them?
Yeah, I can say, I tend not to sign them. Yeah. Huh?
You can answer.
Yeah, you can answer. What do you want me to do? I can't tell you what to do with it. You might want to seek legal advice. I tend not to. I don't even say if it was me.
I do that.
I say I tend not to, right?
Is it NAR that actually does the arbitration? Who actually does the arbitration?
Yeah. So it's a process of, you go in, there is a whole process of where do I go to the arbitration. There's even some spots on here where it talks about a request for arbitration must be filled within 24 hours. Yet they'll bring in people to arbitrate through realtors.
So it is like a NAR thing.
It's a NAR.
You bring in a neutral third party.
And they bring in a neutral third party is what they do. Yeah. Good. All right. What else is required with my offer? My PA, my property disclosure, my arbitration. There's one that we forget all the time.
It's required?
Compensation disclosure is required with your offer if you read what it's why. And why do you think that is? Who's that protecting? Who is it protecting?
I would say buyer.
It's
First
protecting the client, right? They need to understand, if they owe you 3%, let's say, how is that getting paid? Right? So what this compensation disclosure says is, from seller, from buyer, right? And they need to know if they're paying 2% here and I need to pay 1% here, they need to know that on their offer, right? So that's when it's due. Most of us, many of us forget this. Some of us, this used to be something no one forgot, and it would come in with, you'd have your PA, you'd have your arbitration, you'd have your pre-approval, your PA, your arbitration, property disclosure, and then your comp disclosure. Why is that not a great way to do it? Who is this between? Who's this between? Right? So this information doesn't need to go here. That's just the compensation between. So you can send this separate, right? That's between you and your buyer. But if they agree to this, they agree to this. And then you surprise them and say, oh, by the way, you owe me 1% here. What do you think happens? Nothing good, because the Department of Commerce is going to come to you and say, hey, my job is to protect this person. You didn't disclose how this is happening. And you say, well, I disclosed here on my contract. And they'll say, yeah, you did. But in your contract, you also said oftentimes my fee is compensated by the seller, right? So, so that one is important to have on there. If I have sewer septic, you gotta have that on there, right? You gotta have the disclosure. If you have, what other things? What's another one that's probably more common than sewer? Lead-based paint disclosure, right? You gotta have that lead-based paint disclosure. Arbitration is, not arbitration, but, radon mitigation, or radon is another one that's included on there. Anyone doing home warranties right now? Yeah, are you putting them on there? Are you putting, you don't have to have it, but on our contract, it always says, is a home warranty part of the contract, whatever. You are obligated as an agent to talk to your clients about the possibilities of home warranties and what has to go on there, so. Any questions about these things?
Tish, do you add that Tish into your offer?
I'm a big fan of including everything that's in the documents into your PA.
Okay.
So that they go, hey, especially when it comes through authenticide, because it puts that whole package together of this is what we presented in our offer. So this is what we're agreeing to, right?
I usually have them like initial the certificate of compliance, but is that, I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
that's-
I just,
But
if you do it in authenticide, it already like initial each page, well, authenticide already puts an automatic date and time on each
Yeah.
form. So for me, I even wrestled through that, like, am I gonna put an initial on here?
Time consuming.
Right. That was my thing, actually.
Yeah, I'm just lazy.
People don't find these initials sometimes, but, you know, them things good. So I don't think you need that
It's
because
not
it's part of that
necessary.
same package.
Okay.
So that means it was in there, you looked at it, we time stamped it, everything's part of that same time. If it has a cell, well or septic, how many of you guys have written on well or septic? Just know the well and septic disclosure doesn't mean everything is fine with the well and septic. In fact, when you do the addendum that says they're going to inspect the well or fire cellar or inspect the septic, fire cellar, that doesn't have an agreement on who's going to bring that into compliance, right? So they might be doing a well test unless you put things in there that communicate. They will provide a septic compliance, a compliant septic system and cover the cost to get there. Those are the kind of things that you might want to look at. Sometimes those get delayed. I've seen those get delayed and then they find out, oh, we actually have bad water. Now what happens? We're way beyond the inspection period. Now who's going to cover the cost? There's costs of that. Set water's one thing. Once you do that with septic, that's a worse problem because now you're $25,000 into it. You're in a spot where, well, we can't put it in the wintertime. So those kind of things, just make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's on those pieces. Whenever you add a counteroffer, someone tell me about that process. What is the process with the counteroffer?
Check that the final acceptance date will be on the.
Right, so there's a spot on the purchase agreement that has a box like this, and it goes right above the signing, and it has a spot for you to check if a counteroffer is included or not, right? Oftentimes when you submit the purchase agreement to the side, they're gonna counter with you. You would hope that they went through and signed all the PA, right? Checked this box, and then final acceptance is something we gotta talk about. But they check that box and then they send the whole thing to you, right? Because then what do your clients need to do in order for this to be a fully accepted offer?
Counter
They've signed the counter
and.
you put the date in there, and now you have a fully accepted agreement, right?
Everything is accepted.
Everything's accepted because they signed the PA, they signed the counter. You now, your clients now signed the counter, you put the final acceptance date, that's done. What happens if your clients don't accept their counter? And you want to counter back? Well, then what do you include? Right, so now,
I'm like, I can't cut.
now you don't have to include the whole PA, right? You don't have to include the whole PA anymore. You send that back. This box is already checked that there's a counter. They send that back. And then these clients decide, okay, we'll take it. What happens if they decide we won't take it? And your clients go, okay, then we'll sign their counter. What happens? They'll sign the original counter. You have to start over. This, as soon as you send this, this no longer is good.
Yeah, they declined.
Because one party has declined it, we're sending you something different. Oh, you don't like it? Okay, we'll just accept what you did. Too late. Then you can send another counter and make sure everything's good there. But let your clients know, by you rejecting their counter, it's not like something you just come back and go, well, let's test this, and they'll accept it, especially if there's other interest in it. You say no, they say, okay, we're gonna go over here. Wait. Too late. You say no to the counter, you're saying no to the offer. Good? Make sense? Final acceptance date, let's say I sent my PA on Monday, the 1st. Counter, we go back and forth. It's now Wednesday, the 3rd. What's the final acceptance date? Wednesday, the 3rd. Everything inspection-wise goes off the date on final acceptance. Final acceptance doesn't happen until you have all parties sign, right? In this situation, the two parties, the seller and the buyer. Final acceptance, day 1 is the next day, right? Day 1 starts the next day. No matter if it's 6 in the morning where it gets signed or midnight that day, day 1 is the next day. Day 2, day 3, just remember that for inspections. What's the difference between calendar day and business days?
All days on the calendars.
Calendar days are all days on a calendar. Inspections are calendar days, right?
Earnest money, business days.
Earnest money, business days. That is right. Calendar days, business days, just make sure you know which is which. All right, we have 15 minutes
I
left.
have a question before we jump off of PAs.
Okay,
What do we do with cooperating brokerage compensation?
Oh, that's
Does
great.
that need to be attached to a PA if it's between broker to broker?
okay. Why would you say it should be included?
There's fees that I mean, somebody's paying for it. The seller or the buyer are paying for it.
Right.
So it should be really the seller, but.
And I would argue it shouldn't be attached because it is a agreement between co-op, right? So what happens if you have this agreement? It means that the seller has already made an agreement. I'm going to call this to us, right? So the seller and the co-op have already made their agreement. They have a listing contract already. So now the co is just going, okay, I'm going to take what I have and do an agreement with KW, right? I'm going to do an agreement here. So this doesn't need to be included in the PA, right? But what needs to be done between the us and our client? Compensation disclosure. So it needs to show on there, hey, I'm getting paid this by them. Here's what you're paying me. Whether we put it on the PA, whether the seller, then again, the seller is offering to pay the, because the buyer's asked for it, the buyer, which is really KW, right? We can put that on there. The seller is willing to pay KW is on the PA because of the buyer's expense. It's a weird thing where there's not really but they can put that on there, so we got to disclose that. So if they're paying, they're going to pay the 3% on the PA. We wrote it on the PA. Well, I don't need a compensation disclosure because it's already on the PA. Yes, you do. You need to show how you're getting compensated, what they owe you. You gotta have a breakdown for what your clients owe you, what the other side is paying, so they don't owe you that. So whether it comes in a co-op agreement or on the PA, you gotta have the compensation disclosure. Good? Good. Is this going like this? Is this going like, yep, I got it right here? Okay, good.
Kevin,
What? Yeah,
I was just gonna say, there's some brokerages like EXP where they're still offering buyer broker compensation, but they are not doing it as a co-op. They're saying that you have to put it in the PA directly from the seller.
100%. Here's one of the things that I think is interesting. One of the agents called me last night, texted me last night, and said, "Hey, is this agent? This person?" He asked the agent, "Are you offering a compensation?" The agent said, "Yes, 3%. Put it on the PA." It doesn't make sense because if you're offering something, then you should have this co-op brokerage, right? But what happened, I'm sure, is this agent and their client decided we're gonna offer 3%. We could offer up to 3%, but just tell people put it on the PA. That's a private client agreement, because what happened is they were offering 3%, is what the agent said. Our agent was just gonna charge 2.7%. So what happened is that listing agreement offered to spend more of the seller's money than they needed to. So even if when you take a listing, if you're going to express to your client, hey, let's have them put it on the PA. That's great, but don't tell the other side what to put on the PA, right? Because some people have agreements for 2%, some have it for 2.5%, some have it for 4%, some have it. They could be all different things. Whatever's on the PA is negotiable. So don't tell people what to. It's like saying, what are you going to sell the house for? What would you really take?
Well, I also think that there's just a lot of agents still who don't understand what's happening.
Right.
So I get that a lot where it'll be like, yeah, we're offering this amount, put it on the PA. I'm like, no.
Right.
No, those are two different things.
Yeah, and it really is two different things. And it's two different things when we have a conversation with our buyers as well, right? Is, hey, we want to do a full price offer. We're going to talk about what it nets, right? And so the list price is $275. Good thing, or the list price is $375. Good thing they've already are offering me my 2.7%, so we don't have to put that into the net. They've already considered it, but in their pricing. If all of a sudden their pricing is $275, then we're going to put my 3% on there. Our full price offer is not netting them full price anymore. It's just a spot. Now it's an interesting way to do it. And especially when your clients get in a spot where they go, well, we're close, we're competing. What do we do? Your compensation is part of our negotiation. It's just an interesting thing.
Honestly, like putting it in the PA is the easiest.
Putting it on the PA is super easy.
It's so nice. I mean, like, that's actually the best thing that came of this.
It's super easy. There is a brokerage. I think they must have just decided as a brokerage that they're gonna do the opposite. They're just gonna let everyone know, hey, we're offering broker compensation. And it's fun as a buyer's agent to go, hey, I already was able to get my side out of there. So when we're negotiating on the PA, all we're talking about is about what you're paying. My cost is already covered on that. So I like it.
It is nice.
It's just
The time.
it's just, yeah, it's the same thing. It's about how you come, but it's just a different spot. Let's jump to this question. What happens if the other's agent's offering more than what your agreement is?
Amendment, or you can't get it.
Right.
And when do you have to make that amendment?
So when do you have to make that amendment? Before it closes? It has to, the amendment has to be made before a property can close, right? Because you can always amend it something up until closing. So let's say in this spot, this agent had a 2.7 with their client, and now they're offering 3%. What has to happen is the agent has to go back to the client and say, hey, this is kind of fun. They're offering to pay me more. I just need you to agree to this, right? I can't accept it without you signing off. Now, that client may say, oh, way to go, high five, you get that. That client might say, wait a minute, why doesn't that money go to me then? Like, right, the net, all of that is negotiable. What you have to have, by the way, remember, your BAC is part of that compensation. So if your BAC is not on your exclusive representation contracts, buyer rep contracts, you cannot collect that BAC and your commission. So that's all part of it. You're not allowed to take more. So, but you can always go back and amend, and then it's just a negotiation with your client, right? Well, they're offering me 0.3% more. Why don't you take 1.5% of that, and I'll take 1.5%, or however that splits of that, and we'll get to our 0.3, and that'll be great.
How does that then shake out in the end? How does that get executed?
So there is a amendment to the listing agreement, purchase agreement, and something else. They call it an addendum amendment. Or representation agreement. That's just blank. Oh, facilitator agreement. There we go. The title company is only going to see your PA and what's paid out on that spot. And so they'll oftentimes say, what is your commission that you're getting paid? They rarely does the title company say, let me see your buyer representation. You have to have them for us for compliance, but the title company doesn't see them. So really it plays out just on your amendment and paperwork. Should they come back and say, hey, you told me I owed you 2.5%. I see you charged me 3%. It just happened to be paid by this other stuff. Well, now you're going to get in big trouble. You're not just going to get the $1,000 fine, by the way, which is right there if you don't get it. But now you've done ethical stuff. They're going to get violated for those pieces. Good? Good? 5 minutes? Is this fun? Good?
One of the things though is like the buyer's argument in a sense doesn't actually make sense because that money can't, like, if they've already agreed broker to broker, then the money has to go to the broker. The money can't go to the buyer, correct?
Well,
So
no,
if they're
because
saying like 0.3%, I want to pocket that, but that's not money that they could pocket, is it?
sure it is, yeah.
How?
Because you just reduce your costs. So now you're gonna contribute, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to contribute 0.3% of that back to my closing costs,
Got it.
right? So there's all different ways that you could do that. Yeah, I just didn't know if I answered completely. How does that play out? That's one of the ways it could play out is I'm gonna contribute 0.0 whatever percentage back onto closing costs, and that's how they would receive that money.
So they're basically just saying they would want you to contribute to that.
Right, that's one way to play
I
out.
get you.
At what point would the seller and the seller broker agent determine we're gonna up this from 2.7 to 3%? When would they do that?
Typically they do that on the right at the listing appointment, right? So as when we're doing our listing agreement with the other side, we can show. I don't know if we have 5 minutes to go through this. When we do our listing contract, we go and we talk about how we're compensating the other side. That's where that would be in and I say this all the time. Hey guys, I want you to be, as we price your home, I want you to be aware that oftentimes the seller compensates the buyer's agent. Now there's a couple different avenues now that we can do that. One, we can do that through you and I agreeing on that amount right now, and I just blanket offer that to the other side. So in that case, I'm going to list your house for 6%. What I'm going to do with that 6% is I'm going to take 3% of it. I'm going to offer 3% of it there. I'm going to take 3.3%, offer 2.7. And we're going to do it through a co-op. We can also say, hey, I want you to know this is the cost that they're going to do. But let's have them put it on the PA. The seller might, and I might say, typically that's around, oftentimes when I work with people, we want to offer somewhere between 2.5% and 3.5% to the buy side. Well, I'd like to offer, I'm willing to offer 3%. Let's consider that on our offer price. Great. So that might be one of the spots. So as it comes across on the purchase agreement, if someone says, well, I want 2.7% of that, that's great. We've already talked about what's going on there. There's no obligation for me to offer something. We just had the conversation of what might be there. They've asked for 3%. Where I think that listing agent did a disservice to their client is they told someone exactly what to put on the PA, which is silly because that person could have requested less than that. So just prepping, I think it's important to prep our sellers that most sellers are compensating the buyer side agent. And there are a couple different ways that you can do it. And these are kind of a spot where the people I work with tend to offer somewhere between this and this.
And it's crazy. It happened. I mean, we did that where you just told them to negotiate it in and the buyer, requested 2%.
Yeah.
That it might go, gave them like $6,000.
Yeah, yeah. And it's good to prep our sellers that might be showing up there as we price the home, right? We want to be able to go, hey, this is kind of where that might come in. Because to the seller, your net is going to be what matters, right? So.
Are you seeing a lot of people, negotiating, countering only the, selling agent?
I'd like to say no, but yes, I am seeing
It's
people.
uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable, and what I say on my side is, look, I hope you understand as a listing agent that my client owes me that money, whether we put it on the PA or not, and so they're not going to bring the additional money. So I don't know why we want to put it here. And we could also say, where do we need to reflect that on the price then to get to where you need it? Did you really not talk to your client about the way agents tend to be compensated? I kind of go after the listing agreement agent a little bit and make them on, because they are going to be a buyer's agent at some point too, be on the other side of it. Hey, you got to have this conversation with your.
Even if they reflected a lower price point, it's still not gonna make the buyer be able to come up with that money.
Right, exactly. So how about we don't negotiate down here? I've already negotiated that with my client. This is a non-negotiable for them. Let's negotiate where we're at for the purchase price. Right, the challenge is if you don't negotiate it, the whole reason why the co-op thing was popular in the beginning is because it allowed for buyers to purchase homes and not have to bring as much cash. It was good for the customer. That's why everyone got behind it. It was the best way to do business. People still argue that that's the best way to do business. The problem is not that the way it was done. The problem was the clarity and people understanding. They felt like people were saying to buyers, look, it's free to work with me. No, it's not. Like I'm ultimately paying more for this house because I'm working with an agent, whether it's coming out of here or whatever that might be. Ultimately, there is a cost to me. And that's where the real problem was on clarity. Now the problem, depending who you ask, might be on the whole system of a seller paying for a buyer's agent. So that's time. I know there are other questions, and I am willing to take those, not right now, and not in person, but oftentimes over phone. If you get stuck on something, call me, ask me. I'm here to help, and I enjoy doing so.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.